Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Judy Blake, and I am a program coordinator for Family to Family Network in Houston, Texas. We have people joining us from all over the state, so I hope all is well in your neck of the woods. I have joining me Leslie Lawson.
Hi, everybody.
Some of you have emailed with her. You've seen her on previous presentations. Family to Family Network could not survive without Leslie. We also have joining us Leonela Castillo. Leonela.
Hi.
Leonela is bilingual. She is what I hope to be in my next life, speaking both English and Spanish. So I thank you all so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or you can ask them at the end of the session. If you feel uncomfortable asking a question, no worries, just private message one of us, and we will be happy to ask it on your behalf. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. There we go. So back to school. Yikes. Can you all see my full screen?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. So tips to make it a great year. We know that, every child is different. Every family is different. Every school is different. Every school district can be different. In Texas, we practice what we call site-based management. So yes, they're supposed to be following the law, but there are certain policies, if you will, or setting of a tone that it's really guided by the principals. So these are tips that we want to share to hopefully make it a great year for all of you. This would not be possible without our sponsor, Aetna, Better Health of Texas. We are so grateful to them for sponsoring this grant. Otherwise, we would be charging for these presentations. If you have a few extra dollars and want to make a donation, please go to our website. Every dollar does make a difference. So, what are you and your child thinking about the new year? I would love to think that everyone looks like the child on the left, where she's happy and smiling, but chances are you might be the person on the right-hand side. You're thinking, oh my gosh, homework. Oh my gosh, teacher conferences. Oh my gosh, how am I going to get my child out of bed? Well, we're here to try to help with that. Some of you may have already started school. So it depends on what school district you're in. Some may be starting tomorrow. I know where my son attended, he was in Houston Independent School District, and they start on August 12th. So let's talk about it. We always encourage communication with our kids at Family to Family Network. Talk to your child. What are they thinking about the school year? Some kids may not be verbal, but that doesn't mean that they can't communicate or they don't understand something. They may not be able to verbalize it. Some communicate through pictures. Some do artwork. And you can tell how your child is feeling by their behavior. But ask them what they're thinking. If you're able to find out about their expectations, ask them. Are there certain classes they want to make sure that they are really excelling in or have a special interest in? Are there certain clubs that they may want to join if your school has clubs? Are they worried about something? Is there something they're really concerned about? I know with my son, he had a lot of anxiety about getting from class to class. So we had a solution for that. And these are things that you always want to address with your child, because if you put it out there and talk about it, Sometimes you can already address it and find a solution. So those first day jitters may be a little bit less. And if there is something that you're really concerned about, who at the school can you talk to? Sometimes it might be the special ed chairperson. It might be a specific teacher. If your child is involved in a certain sport, maybe it's a coach that you need to email. And look at the last year. How did the last year go? What was successful? What wasn't working out? Not everything is going to be perfect for each year, but what we do want for our kids is that they're included, they're accepted, and they're growing. And that's what we do want. So before school starts, and like I said, some of you, first day of school may be tomorrow. If you can, try to adjust their bedtime by 30 minutes. This makes a huge difference. You know, summer is so wonderful because you can go to bed late and nobody's having to set their alarm. And it's wonderful. However, if your child is going to bed at 11:30 at night and watching their favorite shows, and then all of a sudden Sunday night, they have to go to bed at 8 o'clock or 8:30 at 9 o'clock, that's going to be really hard to do for them. That would be hard for anybody. So if you can, adjust that bedtime by 30 minutes until they reach their typical school bedtime. Try to ease them back into that morning routine of getting dressed when they wake up. You know, I'm not saying that if your child's school starts at 7:30 that for the next 2 weeks you want to wake them up at 6:30 in the morning, but at least get them doing some things. Don't have them sleeping until 11 o'clock in the morning, because that's going to make that first day of school just brutal. So they need to start learning how to wake up earlier again and getting dressed, not sitting on the couch with their video games and their laptop in their pajamas. Some kids might need practice. You know, some of our kids regress during the summer. It's almost like they never attended school the year before, and they might need to practice things again. You know, eating out of the lunchbox, carrying that food tray. And if you help them at home, it makes it easier for them at school. And then discuss what they'll be eating to reduce that anxiety. For my son, and he's now 29, so he's been out of school a long time, it was all about the food. What were they having? And if, God forbid, the schedule changed, sometimes that just sent my son into orbit, and he had a really, really hard time with it. And fortunately, we have the internet today, so you can check the school calendar and see what they're serving. One of the things that my son loved about high school was that they brought in all of these different vendors like Chick-fil-A and Papa John's and all these other places, so my son could order different things. He just loved doing that. One of the things I always found really helpful, because lunchtime can be really challenging for our kids, you know, who are they going to be sitting with? If your child is in general education, that's great. If they have support, where is that support during the lunch hour? And the reason I ask is because you want to make sure that your child, if they want to sit alone and kind of keep to themselves, that's fine. That's certainly their choice. But if they want to sit with someone, what is it going to take to make that happen? My son kind of was by himself, which was really hard for me as a parent, but that's what he wanted. Sometimes he went to the room where they had the special education classes, and he ate lunch with them and brought his lunch because it was more quiet. But find out what your child is doing during lunch. I made friends with the kitchen manager and the staff, and that was really helpful because they always kind of looked out for Ryan and made sure that, you know, he was okay. And you know, as busy as they are, they always made sure they looked out for him. So just make sure that you've got lunch covered. If the school is going to be new to your child, or it's their first year starting, you have a child who maybe they were in ABA therapy for preschool. Maybe you're new to the state of Texas, and this is the first time they're starting school in Texas. They might be anxious. I know I certainly would. Show them the school website. Help them find their teachers or any other staff that they might meet. Show them a map of the school and where their classes might be held. For those of you on this call who are going to have young children, they might be in one class all day. But once you kind of get into third grade, they have, one class and then you switch to another class so you can kind of get used to that. Explain to your child what a typical day is going to look like so they know and they can be prepared. And ask them if they have any questions. Reach out to either the special education chairperson or the assistant principal over special education and ask if your child's locker can be near their office. I put this in specifically in our presentation because that really helped my son. That was huge. And the reason for that is, unfortunately, my son was bullied at various times through school. And sometimes the locker is the perfect place for it to happen. And having his locker right close to the assistant principal's office, it was right outside their door. I introduced him to the assistant principal's administrative assistant, and that was really helpful as well. He could always go right into her office if there was a problem. If your child is in a self-contained or segregated class, make sure you request cameras in the classroom every year if this is what you would like to do. Just because you requested it last year, it doesn't mean that it's going to carry over for this year. Some schools are going to have a form for you to complete. Others will have you email them. But make sure that everything that you do in writing with the school and any requests that you have, please make sure it's in writing. If you verbally tell someone, they're going to forget. They're juggling so many different things. And you may have thought something's being taken care of when it may not be. So please make sure that everything is in writing. And if the school happens to call you, that's fine. I would definitely follow up with an email and say, oh, thank you for calling me, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. I just want to make sure that I understood you, that Johnny will be X, Y, and Z, whatever the conversation was. So again, it's in writing and everyone is on the same page. So meeting the teacher, this is something that is, let me make sure I didn't skip a slide. No, I didn't. Okay. So meeting the teacher, this is really helpful. One of the things that I always did was taking my child, not the night of meet the teacher night, because I knew that I was going to have questions. I didn't need an audience when I was asking those questions. And my son didn't need an audience. He needed to be in a quieter setting. So have your child meet the teacher. They're probably going to feel more comfortable with a one-on-one meeting versus them and 28 other kids and those parents. This is a huge help for any child. You might want to also have them meet multiple times if possible. Teachers are there several days before school starts. They have to get their room ready. They have staff development. So they're going to be there. And if possible, try to meet the teacher multiple times, because I think that's going to ease their comfort on that first day of school. Your teacher's not going to remember everything. They have so much to do, but at least it will help them if they have met your child multiple times. One of the things I love doing, and we really encourage at Family to Family Network, is to create a one-page summary or profile of your child with a picture. Personally, I think every parent should be doing this, regardless of whether or not your child has any challenges or disabilities. Doesn't have to be anything elaborate, just a picture. What are their favorite hobbies, favorite foods, favorite movie, their favorite book? But let the teacher know your child's interests and strengths and how they can support them so they can succeed. And let them know of any triggers that your child might have. With my son, weather was a huge trigger. If it was thunderstorms and lightning and flash floods predicted, forget it. Ryan was not going to be learning very well that day because he was too focused on the rain. Is it going to rain? How much is it going to rain? Is it going to flood? Is there going to be lightning? Is there going to be power outage? So that was a real anxiety trigger for Ryan. Let the teacher know what your child might have difficulty with. Remind them if your child has an IEP, a 504 plan, if there's an autism supplement, a behavior plan, and we're going to go into that more in the next couple of slides. And they can just be bullet points. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. If your school district has already started the school year, what you can try to do is email the teacher and ask for a private meeting. Sometimes what I would do is give the teachers maybe a week or two, especially when we got into middle school, and I would email all of them and ask for a group meeting so that I could meet, because they all, at least this was many years ago, but there was all had usually one school period when they were all together. And if that's the case, that's when I would ask for that meeting. I'd bring some cookies, explain who Ryan is, what works for him, and what the concerns were. Huge help. And they generally really appreciated it. If your child has in-class support, a teacher's aide, a paraprofessional, make sure they know what works best for your child. Is your child getting any kind of therapy at school? Speech therapy. What is that looking like? What does the speech therapist need to know? So if you need to email the teacher, make sure that you allow them about 48 hours to communicate back with you. They're juggling so much. And being a teacher today is not what it was 30 years ago. We ask teachers today to be mediators, nutritionists, therapists, counselors, guidance counselors, nurses, you name it. And I think it's really challenging for them. So just like we want them to support our kids, we need to try and support them as much as possible. So give the teachers a couple of days to respond. And when it comes to communicating, create a communication notebook. Some teachers may already have something that they use to communicate with your child. A lot of the private schools do this, but not the public schools. Some may have you log into the portal at the school district. Check and see if that is something that you can communicate with the teacher on. Again, doesn't have to be anything fancy, doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can just be a binder, folder, spiral notebook, you name it. And it can just go back and forth each day. And it just lets the teacher know important information for the day. I've been divorced for over 20 years. So one of the things that was really challenging for my sons was that Monday after they had been at their dad's, because it was a different house, sometimes different rules, different schedule. And that was really challenging. So I always let the teachers know, okay, Ryan may be a little more tired. He may be a little out of sorts. so they knew what was happening. Email is a great way to communicate. Again, if the teacher has a portal and the school district does, you can share that needed information and get those updates. Teachers are managing so many students, and I think that they can share information a couple of times a week. And this should reduce your concerns. You know, we have some parents that say, well, I want to know every day. I just don't know that that's going to be realistic, and I don't think that it is. You can ask the teacher, could we at least communicate, 2 or 3 times a week, and see what they say. If there is a paraprofessional that's with your child, maybe they can check in a little bit more. But if that paraprofessional is only with your child, for 2 classes, and they have 3 or 4 other kids that they're also juggling, it may be difficult for them as well. So ask what's going to work and then try to balance it out. It's a compromise, I think. Be positive when explaining your child. Regardless of who they are, every child has strengths. And I know that when we're talking to the school and we want to get services and support, we're always discussing their disabilities, their challenges, their triggers, because we want as much support for our kids as possible. But every child has abilities, every child has strengths. And you want to make sure that you share this with the teachers, with the paraprofessionals, the speech therapist, and anyone else who interacts with your child. The music teacher, the PE teacher. Sharing their challenges is important, but don't make it the only thing that you share, because you want the teacher to expect the most of your child, have them succeed, and have them grow. And last time I checked, no child ever rises to low expectations. So having those high expectations for our kids is really important. You can consider creating what we call a one-page profile, and there's a link for it. You can also create a portfolio, and this is something that's a little more fancy. Some parents love doing this. If you're really creative, that might be something that works beautifully for you. I am not creative at all. So I would be doing the very basic type one-page profile. And I'd be typing something out, putting Ryan's picture on there, and there's your profile. But if you want to make something more fancy, more creative, go for it. But make sure that you include their interests, their hobbies, their likes, and what makes them happy and what their strengths are, because every child has them. So how was their summer? Were there any educational opportunities that they took advantage of? Some kids may have attended some type of camp that sparked their interest. There's a lot of those STEM camps, science, technology, engineering, math. Did your child attend one of those? Did your child go to a day camp? And how did that work for them? Were they assigned any summer reading? So for those of you where HISD starts August 12th, well, you're in luck, because you got 5 more days to complete that summer reading if it hasn't been completed yet. But make sure that's been done, because there's nothing worse than your child forgetting about it, remembering it when they're told the first day and they haven't done anything. Has there been a change in their health? Let the teacher know. Let the school nurse know if there's a school nurse. And what events took place that might impact your child's return to school? Did their best friend move away? Did, unfortunately, somebody get sick? Has somebody's health changed? A primary caregiver's health change? Did someone pass away that impacted your child? All of those things are really important. Our kids are so sensitive, and we want to be sensitive to their needs. Was there a change in your child's behavior, and how did you address it? For those of you on this call where your kids are teenagers or tweens or going into high school, it's stressful. It can be really hard. So how are they doing at home? You know, it's so funny because one of the things I always told my sons was, regardless of your disability, you must always try your best. You must always be respectful. And that's regardless of their disability. And you must always be polite. So every child can be polite and respectful and try their best. Your child's records. We know those IEPs that are, 46 pages long. It's a lot of information. Are the goals still appropriate in your child's IEP? If you do not know what IEP means, please reach out to us and we will help you. And we have a video for that. So you want to make sure that the goals are still appropriate. Are revisions needed prior to the school year? If there are, you might need to schedule an ARD or IEP meeting if you believe some changes are needed. Email a copy of your child's IEP to the teacher and anyone working with your child. Please don't assume they already have it. It's a very busy time of the school year. And if teachers are maxed out with the class size, and some of them have even exceeded the class size, even though they're not supposed to, the teacher isn't going to remember that your child has an IEP or a 504 plan. You might want to remind them of that. And they need to look through that. Does your child have a behavior plan? Make sure the team knows what the plan is. It's interesting because I find personally, and maybe Leslie has a different perspective, but if everything's moving along with your child and there are no behavior issues, they're just going to keep skating by. But when there's a behavior issue, that's the first thing teachers are about to bring up. And they'll want to address that. Well, if your child had challenges last year, did the behavior plan work? And if it didn't, modifications need to be made. If you're not sure what that behavior plan is, please reach out to us. What needs to happen is there's what they call an FBA. It stands for Functional Behavior Analysis. And a licensed professional is coming in to evaluate what is causing your child to act out. What's preceding those challenging behaviors? And then what can we do as a team to improve on those behaviors? Are there strategies that are supposed to be used according to the autism supplement? So if your child is diagnosed with autism and you're on this call, there are 11 strategies that are supposed to be considered during the ARD meeting. Not everyone might apply to your child, but they must be considered. Again, if this is something that you're not familiar with, we have a video for that, and we're happy to talk to you as well. So, excuse me, vaccinations and sports physicals. There's a lot of controversy about vaccinations. I understand it. Schools do require up-to-date records on your child's vaccinations. And if you did get an exemption, make sure that the school has that and that you have that required exemption letter to the school. You don't want them having a problem the first day. If you have a child that's involved in sports, I think that's great. But Texas requires athletes to have a sports physical in order to participate in school sports. They just want to rule out any serious injury or harm that could be avoided. And by the way, this does include band members, cheerleaders, and the drill team. And make sure you talk to the coach if there's any issues there. Speaking of sports, one thing that I wanted to mention, and I know that, a lot of schools, you have a locker room and kids have to dress out or change into a uniform. I found that for my son, starting in middle school, I never had him be in PE. This was a huge problem for him, changing in front of other people. My son is not athletic, can be not very coordinated. So I always made sure that he did something else for PE or for gym. Is that something you need to do for your child? I'm not saying that you do, just know that this can be done. In high school, rather than being in PE, he was in the junior ROTC program, and they were wonderful with him. And that was a great substitute for the gym class. My son just does not do well with that. And kids today, I know they're so competitive. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. The school nurse and medications. So if your child has complex healthcare needs, make sure you know who that school nurse is. Does your son have allergies? Do they have an EpiPen with them? Does the teacher need to know about it? Sadly, with all of the cutbacks today, some schools don't even have a nurse, or they have a part-time nurse. Who is the backup if the school nurse is not there? And this can be a very big concern for some families. So make sure you find out that information now. Don't wait until your child is in crisis. Does your child have food allergies? Make sure that everybody around them knows what allergies your child might have and if there are any complex needs. The school district does require a signed form from your child's doctor to administer any medication. And this includes even over-the-counter, Sudafed, Tylenol, ibuprofen, you name it. So some school districts have the form you need. And I listed just 2 of the school sites. That was for Spring Branch and HISD. But you can go on your school's website, download the form, and then make sure it's completed. A lot of schools will tell you if it's a morning medication, make sure you give it to them at home. If it's an afternoon medication, please see if they can be taking it when they get home from school. It's those midday medications that you really want documented. Does something need to be refrigerated? Some of these medications do. And it's really important that everyone knows what's going on. If your child does have a paraprofessional with them, make sure they know. And make sure the administrative team knows. Safety first. Does your child have accommodations to ensure their safety from the school bus or car to their classroom? This can be a real challenge, especially if you have a child that tends to run off. So please confirm this with the teacher before school starts. Schools, at least to my knowledge, when my son went to school, they had the safety patrol. Sometimes if your child is in a special education class, they might have a different drop-off location. Ours, rather than the front of the school, was always on the side of the building where the buses went. So yes, you had the congestion of buses, but you didn't have, 500 cars with all of their kids dropping off their kids. Work out a plan for the school. See what works and what doesn't work. If your child is riding the school bus, please make sure the driver has your name and contact information. You might be in a meeting. You may have a job where you're not allowed to answer the phone during school hours. Make sure there's an alternate name if they can't reach you. I know that and again, I can only speak for HISD, Years ago, they used to call it the bus barn. Find out who that is. Typically 3 or 4 days before school starts, if your child is taking the special education bus, somebody should be calling you and reaching out to you to confirm that your child's being picked up on that route. Make sure you get the bus driver's name and phone number. I always do. I always asked for their cell phone numbers. Whether or not they were supposed to give it to me, I don't know, but they always did. And that really helped me. Because if I'm waiting for my child to get picked up and I have to get to work and they're running late, I could at least call them and say, hey, are you running late? And sometimes I would get a response, sometimes I wouldn't, because they couldn't talk when they were driving and I wouldn't want them to. But things like that will really help make your life easier and your child's life easier. Does your child have to transfer classes throughout the day? Are they going to get any assistance? Or do they get to leave a few minutes early so the halls will be less crowded? This was something that worked really well for my son, especially as he got older. I don't know about your child's schools, but some of these schools are so big. And I have to laugh because my older son's university was smaller than my younger son's high school. And, they're like 2,000 kids. And we always want our kids to be included to the extent possible. But going from class to class can be very anxiety producing. So one thing we always did was we made sure that he left a few minutes early, and that helped a lot. See if that's something that can be done for your child. Make sure their backpack, their materials, they're labeled clearly. If my son lost something, that was a huge trigger for him. And I would always reassure him, anything that's lost can be purchased again. But then he had to go through the day and manage that. And managing their personal belongings can be really overwhelming. Those books are so heavy. One thing that was a huge help was finding out, will they get 2 sets of books? One set for school and one set for home. That was a huge help because nobody wants to be carrying all of those books. So websites you can trust. You already know the Family to Family Network website. And we have great information, so we know that you can trust us. But these are other websites that are really helpful. GotTransition.org, wonderful website that helps our kiddos and young adults to transfer from pediatric health care to adult health care. Please make sure that if you're on this call and your child is older, that you don't have the pediatrician telling you at 18 years old or whatever age they decide to age out, oh, this is your last visit, time to move on, and you don't have another doctor in place. We've actually had families tell us that. So make sure you have a plan. Who are you going to transition to? Navigate Life Texas, fabulous website, all about raising children with disabilities. And thanks to the gods at Google, it is translated into, I think, 130 something languages I've never even heard of. And with Houston being such a diverse community, Navigate Life Texas probably has the answer to most of your questions. For those of you with younger kids, parentcompanion.org, wonderful for parents and caregivers. If you have a child, birth through age 5 years old, even if you're not sure if your child has a disability, they have great information as well if you suspect something. Spedtext.org. This is really great as well. You can chat, you can email, you can have a live chat, or you can actually call and speak to a live person. Isn't that wonderful? And you can ask your questions about the special education process. No one is an expert on anything. Leslie, Leonella, and I, we've been doing this, and we still learn something new every single day. And sometimes you're not sure, but if you're in a meeting and something doesn't feel right or sound right to you, ask someone. It's better to ask and know than to not ask and something to go wrong. And we want you to be sure that you know what is in your child's IEP and what services they should be getting. Because if you don't know, it's really difficult to speak up for your child and to advocate for them. TexasProjectFirst.org, also in English and Spanish. Wonderful website, consistent, accurate, and it educates you on your rights regarding the special education process. Unfortunately, students with disabilities are at high risk for being bullied. I experienced that more times than I care to remember with my sons, and it was so painful. I really love the Pacer Center, and they have some really great information about bullying. Keep in mind, if your child is active on the internet, it's really important that you have safeguards in place so you know what sites they're accessing, who they're talking to, and making sure that they are having safe conversations. Cyberbullying, excuse me, happens these days. It's common and it's a problem. If you notice a change in your child's behavior, ask them what's going on. If they won't talk to you, ask the guidance counselor at your school to talk to them. Maybe a trusted teacher, a coach, someone. Behavior speaks volumes for our kids. And the Pacer Center really has great information. There are anti-bullying laws. In fact, Texas has an anti-bullying law. The problem is sometimes everybody has to be willing to be kind. And when they're not, that's when you have to pursue protection for your child. So make sure you know what the laws are. Always remember that that disability label, all it is a passport to services. You want to label jars and not people. And in my case, my son is still my son. He loves dogs. He loves to go to the movies. He loves to go out to eat. Yes, he has autism. Yes, he has anxiety. Sure, he has Tourette's. But he's still my son first. And we all are concerned about our kids being labeled. And I completely understand that because you want people to see the strengths in your child and not just the disabilities. I think it's finding that balance so that our kids are supported so they can be successful and providing support or accommodations when needed. Always remember that you're not alone. Call us, email us. Sometimes it may take us a few days to get back to you, and we apologize for that. We are a tiny but mighty nonprofit, and we are trying to serve so many families in the greater Houston area. You can always like us on Facebook and stay in touch. And we have our website as well with a fabulous calendar of events. So this is one of many classes that we're going to be having through December. And in the email reminders that I sent you, the flyer is attached in both English and Spanish. Please feel free to share the flyer because we want as many people to register as possible. And then you can always check our website if you've misplaced the flyer. Our grant funders, they want to see data. They want to know, did you like it? Did you learn something? Would you suggest this to somebody else? So you probably have your phone nearby. I know you do. If you could please take a picture, there's the QR code. And Leonella or Leslie, if you could please put the link in the chat box, that would be great. And we want to hear from you. I'm happy to send you the recording. Please email me if you would like it, and I can certainly send you the recording. Just please complete the survey because we want to make sure that our funders know that you are pleased with the programs. And we want you to be honest. The day we stop learning is the day we stop living, and we always have something to learn. So please feel free to let us know. And if you need something, we are just an email or phone call away. So questions. We know you might have questions, and we wanted to make sure that we allowed enough time for that. We truly appreciate you joining us. We know that so often you are juggling so many things. Some of you are juggling multiple kids, multiple disabilities, multiple jobs. Maybe you're caring for a loved one in addition to your children. We really appreciate you joining us, and please know that we're always here. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
My son, was in the early childhood special education class, and we met at the.
I lost you, Alita. I think I lost your volume, unless it's just me.
No, I lost her too.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Leslie.
How soon after the school year starts should they schedule the ARD to review the results for that?
So I lost part of your question because it broke up. So could you repeat the entire question again? I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Are you able to hear me right now?
Yes, I am. Thank God. Yes.
Okay. Maybe it's the signal. It's because I'm in my vehicle.
No worries.
I was asking, we had an ARD for placement at the end of the year, and he'll be in pre-K. But we started in the an IEE,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't completed until the summer.
Okay.
So it completed now. So my question is, how soon should they schedule the ARD for the review of the IEE results?
I would reach out to the school. Do you know who it is? And for those of you who don't know what IEE means, it's an independent evaluation. And you can request that from the school district if you disagree with them as to what their findings were, and they send you a list, and there is no charge to the parents for that independent evaluation. I would find out now. I mean, if it was already done, somebody should be following up with you.
Okay, so I should let them know that the IEE was already completed, and
Yeah,
when we can schedule.
absolutely. Did you get that report yet?
I haven't received the report yet. The social worker from the ABA specialist clinic, sorry, not the ABA specialist clinic, the autism developmental pediatrician social worker was in touch with the school psychologist that did the IEE, and she
Okay.
said that it was already completed, and that yes, she agreed to the diagnoses with what the doctors were, because
Okay.
I was having a challenge of the school accepting my son's autism. They had him as non-categorical with emotionally disturbed, but
Got it. Got it.
they
And so the evaluator said, yes, your child is on the spectrum.
yes, ma'am.
Good. Okay. Wonderful. So when you have that ARD meeting, I would email the school, and when can we set up that ARD meeting? And make sure they consider the autism supplement.
Make sure
When-
you're communicating and writing to the school on all of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would email the special education chairperson, the assistant principal. When can we schedule the ARD meeting? We have the results of the independent evaluation.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? Okay. It keeps breaking up on my end a little bit. My apologies.
No, it's fine. Yes, ma'am. did.
Okay,
So just you're saying basically reach out to them. I'm
absolutely.
going to go ahead and make sure I reach out to the school psychologist first to make sure
Sure.
that she has a report typed up and everything so that we're on the same page as far as when we can meet as well.
Yes, that would be great. That would be great. And I would get that done as soon as possible so the appropriate supports can be put in place.
Okay.
Can I say
Well,
something,
thank you.
Judy?
Yes, go ahead, Leslie.
So, you know, they don't necessarily have to accept the results of the IEE. So keep that in mind, but you, at the end of every ARD meeting, you do have a right to agree or disagree. And if they don't want to accept it and you think it's important that they accept the results of the IEE and include the autism supplement and the autism label, if they're not going to do that, you do have a right to disagree and follow your procedural safeguards. So that's really important to know. And because you do have an outside evaluation from a professional, you know, that's in your favor if you think that's something important. So if they say, no, we're not going to accept that, just make sure you understand your procedural safeguards and what you can do if you don't agree. And reach out to us if you need help with that.
Okay.
Does
Thank
that
you.
make sense, Alita?
Yes, ma'am. So I wasn't aware that they could refuse the results of an IEE
Well,
because we have
what
three medical diagnoses of the autism, but the school has
Yeah,
not accepted it yet.
they have to
Yeah.
consider it,
right.
and most school districts will accept it, but I have heard cases where they don't because. So I just want you to be prepared on what to do. So at the end of every ARD meeting, you have to check a box that says agree or disagree. And if you're not agreeing with a decision that's very important, you definitely want to check disagree. And anytime you disagree, and we're going to have a whole training on that, you want to use your procedural safeguards, which would be either a complaint, mediation, or due process. So, and a lot of times just because you file one of those things doesn't mean it has to go through. They will have to have another resolution meeting with you. And at that point, they know you know your rights. So they're more likely to come to some kind of resolution. So don't be afraid of that process.
But you have to take the next
Okay.
steps.
Thank you for that.
You have to take the next steps if you disagree. It's not like you can just disagree with an ARD decision, an ARD committee decision, and then magically something is going to change. It doesn't work that way. You have to reach out to them. Okay, when are we meeting to talk about this?
Yeah. If you disagree and do nothing, that's the same thing as agreeing with them. So anytime you disagree, if you want something different to happen than what they think should happen, you have to use your procedural safeguards to move forward, which is complaint, mediation, or due process.
Thank
And
you.
we can help you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Kelly, do I have any recommended? Yes, I have advocates. Unfortunately, they are not free, but we do have a list of possible agencies that might be able to help you with the cost of an advocate. If you email me, I'm happy to send you this information. And you still want to make sure that you know your rights. I know that some people do want an advocate. There are a couple that we have that are more reasonably priced. Yes.
Yeah, and there are like sometimes Disability Rights Texas will take your case if it's one of their priority issues.
Right.
And there's a couple of real low cost or free ones. That's how they're divided up on the list that we send out to people.
Yeah.
Sometimes Partners Resource Network, which is our state advocacy agency, will help you also. So,
But they won't go to the meeting anymore.
yeah, they won't go to the meeting, but
Yeah.
they'll help you prepare. I mean,
Right. Right. Yeah, they will, but it's not like someone's going to be there.
and
that's-
another caution about hiring and paying an advocate a lot of money, make sure that advocate understands your point of view and is going to be on your side, because I've had a lot of parents spend a lot of money only to have the advocate kind of side with the school district. So, and make sure you know every little thing they're going to charge you for, because
Right.
some of them charge you every time you text them or pick up the phone. So just, I'm not saying you shouldn't use an advocate. They could be very helpful, but make sure you understand the financial arrangement also.
And make sure you complete the survey. Thank you, Leonella, for adding that. And you're very welcome, Cody. Any other questions? Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Leslie, thank you so much for adding that. That was very helpful. Hope to see you next time, everybody. Thank you so much.